ministry wife is a vocation without a job description. And let's be honest, sometimes it seems like ministry might be easier if we did have one. If you are a ministry wife like me and are looking for hope, perspective, and a little bit of practical advice regarding your role, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Christine Hoover, author of How to Thrive as a Pastor's Wife. Welcome to the Ministry Wives Podcast, a production of the North American Mission Board. Join me as we hear from women from various ministry contexts having authentic conversations about our shared joys and challenges, even the ones we're unsure we can talk about. No topic is off limits. Today, my guest is Jennifer Clifton. Jennifer and her late husband, Clint, have 5 amazing kids and 1 incredible daughter-in-law. Church planting has been their life for the last 2 decades as they planted themselves and then helped train others to plant as well. You're going to hear about it in our conversation today. I asked Jennifer to come on the show to tell us about her life, her marriage, and her ministry with Clint. She shares about her adventurous, idea-generating husband, how she sought to support him and partner with him in ministry, and what she hopes their legacy together will be. She also shares with us what I hope will give us perspective about our current marriages, ministries, and parenting. I know you will be blessed and encouraged by what she shares. Here, friends, is my conversation with my friend, Jennifer Clifton. It's my great privilege to welcome Jennifer Clifton to the Ministry Wives podcast. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hey, Christine. Thanks for having me.
I have known you for a while. We were planting in Virginia. We landed in Virginia. It's been 15 years ago now. You guys were already there. I believe you and Clint had already planted your church. Is that right? What year did
That
y'all
is
plant?
right. Yeah. We had, Pillars about 18, almost 19 years old.
Okay. And you and Clint have been cheerleaders for us from the very beginning. I don't even remember how we got connected to y'all. Probably Clint and Kyle, my husband, connected, but huge cheerleaders for us and huge cheerleaders for me in my writing and all that I've done with Church Planting Wives. You and Clint have cheered me on. So this is a huge privilege for me just to get to talk to you today and to talk a lot about Clint. So can you give us a little bit of a background on your family, where you are, your ministry, what's going on with you right now?
Yeah, sure. So Clint and I were married 22 and a half years before we lost him in January. We have been in ministry the whole time we were together. I mean, he was kind of like working his way into ministry even when he was in high school. So that's all I've ever known him to do.
Y'all were dating in high school?
We did. We were high school sweethearts.
Wow.
Yeah, so together for a long time. But we have 5 kids, ranging from ages, my oldest is about to turn 22 and my youngest is 14. In March, we added another one when my oldest Noah got married to Mihaela. She's wonderful. We love her so much.
That's amazing.
And we're going to be adding another one this coming summer because my oldest daughter, Ruthie, just got engaged last week. So we're just growing by leaps and bounds over here.
Yes. Well, congratulations to you. That's amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I want to note too, we were talking before we started recording. I always have said that Clint was a big reason why this podcast exists. And as we were talking, you were like, actually, I told him he needs to pick up this podcast with Nam because he worked for Nam and he was the one who said, "Hey, bring your podcast on over. Tell a little bit about that."
Yeah. So Clint, I mean, he had social media and he was on it when he needed to post something. But other than that, he didn't really keep up with anything unless I said, "Hey, did you see blah, 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 blah?" And that was what happened. I was like, "Hey, did you see Christine's going to like stop doing her podcast?" And he was like, "What?" And so hence the Christine coming over to NAM was bored. So
So
yeah.
everybody who enjoys this podcast has Jennifer Clifton to thank, including me. So thank you for
Oh, of
putting
course.
that in his ear. Well, and just tragically losing him last year, I would just love for you to be able to share about him and about, you know, his life, his ministry, his legacy that he has left you and your children, but goes beyond you and your children.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to do that. I mean, the man was full of ideas, crazy, logical. I mean, he had them. Like, it was like, okay, can you just slow down a minute? Like, we haven't finished the last idea you were talking about, and so we need to, like, finish that one before we start a new one, but that was just not how he operated.
Yeah. So y'all dated in high school. You got married, I'm assuming pretty young.
We did get married young. I was 20 and he had just turned 21. We had both of us had like 1 year of college left, and
Yeah.
then when we got married, and so maybe only a semester. No, it was a year. It was a year we had left. So yeah, we got married young, which was we loved. Like, we loved being married young. We've encouraged our kids, like, if you found the one that God's giving you to be your spouse, like, don't wait around, just go ahead and get married, which that's what
They're
they're doing
doing.
apparently.
Yeah. They're
Yeah,
doing
like,
it.
start doing life together.
Yeah,
So,
so when did what were tell us your ministry trajectory. Where did you go once you got married? What were y'all doing in ministry?
yeah, so when I married Clint, I knew we were like ministry bound. That was not a shock, surprise. Like, it was evident. I mean, he talked about it all the time. And so in the beginning, he was a worship leader. A lot of people don't know that. But
I
he
didn't know
was a
that.
worship leader. He played guitar. I mean, he had a fantastic voice. But towards the end of college and in seminary, God started moving his heart towards church planting. So he knew he was headed in that direction. Um, we moved to Stafford, Virginia, and he was the worship leader at that church. And when he accepted that position, he had told Pastor Bill Jessup that I will come be the worship leader, but you need to know this about me. Like, I'm going to church plant. Like, if you can help me grow as a pastor and, learn, pastoral care and counseling and things like that. So I'm ready to go out when it's time for me to plant. And then you send me out to plant. That would be great and wonderful. And that's exactly what happened. Like, Pastor Bill helped him grow in those areas. And then Stafford Baptist sent us out to plant Pillar Church of Dumfries.
And y'all planted. Did you plant with the Garmins?
We didn't plant with the Garmins. Colby Garmin was the youth pastor at Stafford Baptist, where Clint was the worship pastor. And so that's where we met Colby and Annie. We love them. They're so fantastic. And that's where we met them. And so they were, our big cheerleaders, still big cheerleaders, have supported us in every step of the way. And so eventually they did come on staff at Pillar Church of Dumfries, and that's where Colby is now.
Yeah, and that's where you are now, correct?
Yes, I'm still there. Yeah, our family is still at Pillar Church here in Dumfries. We haven't left permanently. We've gone to help other church plants periodically and then always come back. But yeah, I mean, up until Clint passed, he was still pastor there, elder. He was still ministering at Pillar.
He was, but he had his hands in so many things. And I'd love to talk about that. One of the things that he had his hand in was starting what's called Pillar Network. Is it called Pillar Network or what's it?
It's called Praetorian Project. The Praetorian Project, he and Colby were like, so we live in a very military heavy area. I mean, we're just south of Washington, D.C., and they were just, praying about, we wanted to plant churches. How do we do this? We've got all these military families who are here. They're here 2 to 3 years and then they're gone. How can we, send them out and have them a place where they don't have to go church shopping and all of this kind of stuff? And so just through prayer and conversations, they were like, well, why don't we plant churches around military bases? And so that's where Praetorian Project was born. And so the Praetorian Project is, a group of multiplying churches planting around military bases.
Uh-huh. And how many churches have been planted?
Oh gosh, I should have known you were going to ask me that.
It's a
We're
lot.
in the we're in the double digits.
Yes.
That's the safe answer.
I and it goes beyond what you're saying. I'm just gonna say it is so a Marine can move from Dumfries and they can go any of their bases. There's a church plant where they've been trained. A lot of them have come out of y'all's church, correct?
A lot of them have, yes, but some of our ones that we sent out have multiplied, and then some of the new church plants are like grandbabies of Pillar Dumfries.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And y'all do a lot of care for the families, the church planting families. So do you still do the retreat once a year for all the
we
planters?
do once a year. Yes, once a year in the summer, we have a retreat where all the planters and their wives and their families we get together, and it's kind of like a family reunion.
Yeah.
We're together maybe like 4 days, and it's just like fully immersing ourselves in each other, like catching up, what's going on, praying for each other, encouraging each other, just being together in a relaxed setting. I mean, we have a schedule and stuff, and we've got things that we do, but it's really the best week of the year
Yeah.
for all of us because a lot of us, because we're all ministry families, we don't get to say, hey, let's go do this together because everyone's got ministry stuff going on. And, some of our families are in Okinawa, Japan, and in California and Florida. I mean, we're literally all over the place. So to have
Mhm.
that 1 week a year where like we're going to be together is so fantastic.
Yeah. So that's just one idea that has come from the Clifton family, and I love that. He seemed to be such an adventurous person, kind of a risk taker. He didn't mind that at all, but I also think there's an aspect of humility to him that I got to see some, and one of the ways I saw that was you guys planted Pillar, and then you brought in Colby, and Colby kind of became the lead pastor, is that right?
They would never describe it as lead pastor. They were always like, we're pastoring together, we're doing this together. He's the pastor, I'm the pastor. Colby's strengths are teaching, discipleship. Clint's strengths are church planting, and they ran in their lanes, but they did it together. They were never, oh, he's the lead, I'm the second. It's always like we're a team, we're together.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he brought Colby on. I remember that very conversation was like, okay, Clint was like, this is becoming a lot. I need some help. Who can we bring on? It was kind of like, who do we trust with our baby? Because
Yes.
if you've planted, like you invest blood, sweat, and tears, and it's hard. And so when you're going to have somebody come in, you need a planting partner, a ministry partner who is on the same track, who is going to help you establish and set goals on the same page.
Yeah, and be
So
able
yeah.
to work together well. Those guys
Yeah.
work together very well.
Oh,
And you and Annie. So I mean, we're talking a lot about Clint, but none of this could have been without you. It's a team effort. And so I would love to talk about you and how did you partner with Clint in this kind of ministry?
so I love Instagram, and I follow all these wives on Instagram, and some of them have started companies and all the stuff, and they do all of these videos and whatever, and they talk about having wranglers
Mhm.
that kind of like keep everyone together and making sure
Yes.
everyone. I would describe myself as Clint's wrangler. Like, okay, stay focused. You wanted to do this. This was your goal for this. Like, stay on track, keep it going. So, his wrangler is one way I would describe how I helped him. I mean, he knew I was all about whatever he needed. Like, I was supporting him in every way. I was making sure the kids had what they needed and just making sure the home was set so where he wasn't stressing about ministry and the house. And so, but he also knew like church wise, in the very beginning of Pillar, there was one situation when he was like, our children's ministry person is leaving. We don't have anybody who stepped up to do it. Can you please just fill in until we find someone who feels God's called them to that specific ministry. So he knew he could ask me to fill in if he needed. And so, I mean, he allowed me to do the things that I felt like God had gifted me in, but he also knew if he was in a pinch, he could ask me and I would obviously step in to do that,
Yeah,
whether I liked that area or not.
yeah. Anytime I've been around y'all, I feel like you're a calming presence. You're a very peaceful presence. Like he was he was kind of bouncing off the walls, and you were you just bring such a warmth and a calming presence. And I can see how God put you together to do that work.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a great way to describe it.
So what do you think that Clint's legacy is and will continue to be?
I think his legacy is just church planting. Like he felt like it was so very important and he wanted to do everything he could. He wanted to use every breath he had to show guys the leadership skills that he saw in them. He wanted them to point them like, God is calling you to do this. Like you're fighting it. Stop fighting it, just obey. And he's like, let me come alongside you, let me train you, let me get you ready, let me send you out, let me support you. He was all about like pointing out their god-given skills, training them, sending them out, and encouraging them. Like he loved doing that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know where you are now. Just that's a very open question, but where are you now and where are you finding your life and your place now that you are serving the Lord without Clint?
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations in the last week, so it was really funny. We were scheduled to record today because the last week I've really just been, our whole 22 years has been ministry minded. The last 18 and well, 19 really, if you count all the like core team meetings, have been church planting, specific. So I was just telling a friend of mine, I was like, church planting's like the only thing I know. And without him being around, he worked with NAM and loved NAM, and he served in many different roles for NAM, but it was always church planting related. And so we got to spend a ton of time with like Northern Virginia, DC, Baltimore planters and their wives and their families. And I was like, I miss being around those people. Like, I
Yeah.
want to still be able to encourage those planter wives and make sure they know they're just as important as their husbands. Like, their husband was called to church planting, but they were called to their husband and to be their helpmate. And so that means they were called to church planting too. And so they're just as important as their husband, as the planter. And so I want them to know that. I want them to feel encouraged in that. That doesn't mean their roles look exactly like their husbands. Obviously, we serve in different roles. Also, I planter wives, they need to like recognize and know like right now this is your role, but in a year or so your life is going to look very different. So I feel like what our roles are depends on what season we're in. Like if we got a bunch of little kids, like it's really hard
Yeah.
to be like super involved, but if your kids are older it may be a little easier. Like what our role is, I think roles and seasons. And so I just think it's important. And I would love for like church planter wives to like recognize that and be encouraged in that. And husbands need to recognize that about their wives and just help them recognize what seasons they're in and how they best can be used in that season. So
So you'd
yeah,
like to be able to are you having opportunities to get to share those things or
I opportunities are starting to arise, and that's just mainly because everybody has given me a lot of time to just be with the kids and like grieve and figure out what our life is going to look like and just let everything just kind of settle. I mean, we're 9.5 months out from Clint's accident. And so the kids and I are doing well. And so we're ready to, start, okay, this is what life's going to look like. And so I've realized I would love to still be able to be supporting planter wives and church plants and things like that. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I hope that you have more opportunities. I mean, this is this is you. I would love to just kind of ask you some questions now that goes along with that, because I think when you what you've experienced, not just Clint's death, but all those years of ministry, you have such perspective. And I think I'm sure you've had a lot of time to reflect on what you and Clint chose to do as a couple in terms of ministry and parenting. And so I would love to just hear from that perspective and hear your perspective on, and as the listeners getting to learn from you of what matters and what you're
Yeah.
glad that you did and maybe what you would have done differently. And so can let's just go there. And I would love to hear from you in terms of your marriage. What's your perspective on marriage, and what would you say to the ministry wives listening about their marriages going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, Clint and I did everything together. That was just kind of, it started out as like something we did early on in our marriage, and then it just became a family motto. So we have a family motto that is, what we do together. And that simply grew out of, because when we were planting in early ministry, it was, there's a lot that happens in the early stages of planting. Let's say
Mhm.
that.
Yes.
There's a lot of meetings and outreaches and core team stuff. And it's like, we have a decision to make early on. What is our marriage going to look like in regards to ministry? And is it going to be Clint goes off and does all of this stuff, or are we going to do this together? That's really what it came down to. Is like, and that really boiled down to, do we believe God called Clint to do this, or do we believe he called us to do this? And really the answer is he called us to do this because he put us together.
Right.
And so early on, we just decided in our marriage, we're just going to, like, as much as possible. Now, granted, it doesn't work in every scenario, to just do things together. And just, I mean, we did everything together. Like, we talked about everything, hence all his crazy ideas. I learned, we were talking about this earlier. I learned early on that he was a thinker that just needed to say it all out loud. He just spoke everything he thought. That didn't mean he actually believed it, but he just needed to, like, say it all out loud. And so I learned early on to just let him ramble on and talk. And if it was a good thing, like, we would both come to the conclusion that it was a good thing. But 80%, I mean, he had such crazy ideas. So 80% was him just, like, rambling on. And then I would let him get to the end of it. And he's like, yeah, that's a terrible idea. And so I just learned who he was and how he processed, and that helped our marriage a lot. Just like, okay, he's not actually going to do this crazy hot air balloon idea he has. He just needed to say it out loud and realize himself, yeah, that's probably not a great idea. And so, that helped our marriage, learning him and how he operated. And then just knowing we're just going to do things together within reason. And just, I mean, we really did everything together. We talked about everything, and yeah.
Yes, y'all are a power couple.
Yeah.
What about parenting? What's your perspective? I mean, you're still parenting, but your kids, I mean, they're starting to really come up and reflect you and Clint. And they they have a heart for the Lord, they have a heart for ministry. And so give us a perspective, like ministry wives listening who have small kids and they're church planting, they're like, is this going to be good for my kids? What perspective would you have?
Yeah, I mean, the Lord called your family to that, just like he called you as a couple to it. And I think um, our kids learned a lot about ministry by us just bringing them along with us. Like, if we had an outreach event, we had all the kids in tow. I mean, and we had our first three are like super close in age. Number two and number three, Ruthie and Isaiah, they're literally almost 15 months apart. So, I mean, they were
Whoa.
very close. But we just kind of, like, took them, if we were doing outreaches, if we were doing outdoor movies, like, we homeschooled, and we still do. And so that helped with our schedules a little bit. And so we were able to be flexible with that. Like, I trained the kids to be able to stay up late, and so we'd sleep in the mornings. Like, we took them to life group. Like, we just kind of like involved them in all the ministry things that we did. And
Yeah.
so they got to see, it wasn't we just told them this is what God wants, this is what God has said, this is what the Bible says. Like, we were actively showing them those things.
Yes.
I think that says a lot. It's like, oh, it's not just my mom and dad said this. Like, I'm actually seeing it. And they were seeing other families do it as well. So it wasn't just our family's crazy. So
What about ministry? You know, as you look back and you described your role, and I know how important that is, but sometimes for a ministry wife who's in the thick of church planning and she's like, I'm taking care of the house and the kids, I don't feel like I'm really doing anything of significance. And is what I'm doing really helping him or really serving the Lord? What would you say to ministry wives in that spot?
I would say that is probably the biggest role you will ever do, because you're taking the stress away from your husband, that he doesn't have to necessarily be super concerned with the kids and the house and all of that. He can fully rely on you to take care of those things during that season, and that relieves stress off of him. And so I think that's probably the biggest role a ministry wife can play. So,
Yeah, that's helpful. Well, how can we be praying for you and your family, Jennifer?
well, my oldest son, Noah, in true fashion, has taken up in the family business, and he and his wife, Mahala, have moved to Florida, and they are planting a church
Oh, wow.
in Crestview, Florida, and they launch November 2023. And so we're excited about that. And so that's a huge prayer request. First of all, he's moved to Florida. That's very far from his mother.
Yes, it
And
is.
yeah. And then, my oldest daughter is getting married. Her fiance is a Marine, so they also will move
Wow.
somewhere. But I have the hope that, the Praetorian Project has planted around all these military bases. So hopefully they will be landing somewhere near one of those. And we're just, um, we're just figuring out life one day at a time, and what our new normal is without Clint, and just trying to figure out, I'm personally just trying to figure out what's my new identity, I guess. Um, yeah, without Clint being here and without him, I was just helping him and all his ministry stuff. And so, what does that look like for me now? Like, I would still like to be involved in church planting and planter wives and encouraging them, but what does that look like going forward? So,
Yeah. Yeah. I will pray that the Lord opens up opportunities for you. And
thank
I'm
you.
going to ask the listener now, when you stop listening to this, that you pray for Jennifer and her family as they continue to grieve and really probably just getting started. 9 months is not very long. So, just getting started with that and figuring out as you said, a new normal. We're going to pray for you. And I'm just thankful that you were willing to talk to me, Jennifer. I really wanted to honor Clint and you, and because you guys have honored us and you have been a blessing to us. And we're just one couple, one family. There's so many people who have been blessed by you and Clint and by your family. And so thank you for being willing to come on and share with us today.
Yeah, of course. We love you guys.
Ladies, if you are a woman who leads in ministry, whether you're on staff or in a volunteer capacity, I would love to invite you to join me for the first National Women's Evangelism Conference in Alpharetta, Georgia on April 8th and 9th next year. I know this event will encourage and equip you to create a culture of evangelism in your ministry. Register today and make plans to join us. Visit namevangelism.com/women-conference or visit the link in the show notes for all the details. Can't wait to see you there.